Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Passive real estate investing with turnkey property sounds incredible, and it can be highly profitable for you if you know which pitfalls to avoid. But what are some of those downsides to turnkey real estate investing? We're going to look at those places where you need to pay attention to avoid loss and frustration today on Get Rich Education. MC Lobsher is the host of the Cashflow Ninja podcast and president of Producers Wealth. He is on a mission to help you achieve financial independence and freedom as soon as possible. He achieves this by integrating the infinite banking concept with real estate investments to increase your returns and recapture cash flow that you are not even aware of that you're losing. MC shares the number one strategy of investors in his holistic wealth creation course at yourownbankingsystem.com. Finally, Total Control Financial gives you checkbook control of your 401k and IRA money to invest in real estate. It's time to get your retirement money into your own checking account, but you've got to avoid the little-known tax that you'll pay with any self-directed IRA. Instead, it's time for the QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000. Get Rich Education is brought to you by Ridge Lending Group, Producers Wealth, Norada Real Estate, and Total Control Financial.
You're listening to the show that has created more passive income for people than nearly any show in the world. This is the powerful Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE. You are back in that abundant place where you realize that you have a choice between either living below your means or just using those same efforts to expand your means. And you need a dose of abundance because the scarcity mentality is abundant and the abundance mentality is scarce. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold, and I'm so grateful that you're listening to the 217th installment of Get Rich Education. 4 episodes ago, we talked about how commercial real estate investing compares with residential. Last week, we discussed active real estate investing with Victor Minaj and its pros and cons. One big pro was how you can ethically pay yourself a healthy developer fee, and the big drawback is that it takes a lot of your time and your coordination. This week, we're talking about passive real estate investing, where you're largely inactive and you've outsourced the work, and at the same time, you've outsourced the sweat equity that goes along with it. Now, when you buy passively with a turnkey property, you think that's great. This way, the property is already extensively rehabbed, tenanted, and under management, ideally by the time you close. That's why it's called turnkey. It's all done for you. You know, so much of your life experience is based on how it compares to the expectations that you have before that anticipated experience. So much of your life is about expectations. Well, sorry to burst your bubble, but turnkey doesn't mean that you can be forever completely uninvolved. Now, turnkey might be as close to hands-off as you can get for you owning title to a residential property yourself. That's its appeal. Turnkey often beats you managing a new construction project yourself, like we discussed last week, where you often have to wait 18 to 24 months or more to get your cash flow. Let's talk about some of the cons, the drawbacks of turnkey real estate investing. The fact that it is hands-off and all done for you could actually be a downside to you based on how you're wired. If you want to pick the paint color and the hardwood flooring type, and the kitchen cabinet brand and model yourself, well, then turnkey probably isn't for you. If your provider does all of their property's interior paint finishes in, say, an eggshell rather than a semi-gloss, and you tell them that it's got to be semi-gloss and that LVP, luxury vinyl flooring, has to extend all the way into the bedrooms when the provider usually only takes it as far as the hallways, well, see, now if you're constantly trying to nose into everything and micromanage operations like this, then turnkey is not for you if you want that operational level of close control. Now, of course, you are ultimately the one in control, of all of this. You have the power to replace your property manager. You have the control of when to buy and sell the property. It's your property. You have control of the biggest lever here. Now, this might sound painfully obvious, but don't invest money into a long-term buy and hold piece of real estate, which Turnkey is, if you need your money back in a year and a half or 2 years, because it's very unlikely that you're going to be profitable by paying transaction costs twice, both going in and coming out, all in less than 2 years. Part of the reason for this, and it's yet another turnkey drawback, is that you shouldn't expect to have any substantial equity on the day that you buy above and beyond the down payment that you've made. So you might get your appraisal to come in just a touch higher than your contract purchase price, but see, you're not the one forcing the equity. The provider is. You are paying someone to do the work for you. That can rub some people the wrong way. That's one side of the coin. Understand that at the same time, this scenario is an attraction to a lot of people, me included. I understand the value of having an instant rehab team in an out-of-state investor advantage market that is going to make my life easy. Now, that's just what I happen to want. That's the other side of the coin. Not everyone feels that way. So we're talking about the pitfalls, the drawbacks of passively investing in turnkey real estate. And notice that many of these drawbacks apply to non-turnkey properties as well. For example, another pitfall to look out for is when a rehab isn't started or completed when expected or promised. Now, just because a company says that they're a turnkey provider, well, that doesn't just instantly make them reputable. Ask for testimonials. Nothing is more real than talking to other investors that already buy from a company and receive rent checks on a regular basis. In fact, starting about 2 years ago, we've had some Get Rich Education listeners like you come onto the show and tell us about your experience. In addition to that, just like you, I am an active buyer and investor myself. I learned about a turnkey company in the past. They didn't stay in business very long. They just took a photo of a prettier property next to the one they wanted to sell you and represented it like that was the one, the subject that you were buying. Google Street View will not save you from an unethical operator attempting something underhanded like that because their Google Street footage is typically months or years old. WeGoLook.com is a service where you can hire an independent freelancer from an area to go put their feet in the street and verify facts like this for you if you have some reason to be suspicious. I have never had to do that. I only deal with established operators. But, even with an established, reputable operator, of course, it never means that your risk is zero. Just like any business anywhere, a provider's business might grow faster than they can hire new personnel to keep up with it. Or there are just all kinds of reasons that the ball can get dropped sometimes, of course. One red flag in an operator is when they're breaking down the numbers on a property that's available to an investor like you, and they'll use big estimates about the property's projected future appreciation in order to cover up negative cash flow. Well, for a beginner, I've told you about VIMTUM numerous times. That's an acronym, VIMTUM. After your mortgage expense, that acronym accounts for your operating expenses. It's vacancy, insurance, maintenance, taxes, utilities, and management. Those expenses all need to be deducted from your rent, and then that projected cash flow number had better be positive. When you're under contract on a new purchase, now it's time for you to schedule a property inspection, which occurs before your appraisal. Be sure to get an independent third-party inspection. It's cheap insurance. I have seen providers try to tilt investors under contract away from getting an inspection, saying things like, well, your closing will go faster if you skip the property inspection. I'm telling you, don't skip it. And your inspector will always have some deficiency findings, like always, even in a new construction property. And I ask the provider that most or all of the inspector's deficiency findings be addressed. Now, when it comes to the ongoing long-term property management that your turnkey provider offers, the real deal is that some companies only really offer property management so that they can make it a turnkey business model. And what's at that company's core is instead really the skill set of identifying a distressed asset and then buying it themselves and then renovating it themselves. It's not so much the management. Some companies, like the ones I avoid, don't really have the most communicative managers. Now, you are an investor and you're not looking for a chummy relationship necessarily, but management is, I feel, the toughest part probably of the entire world of real estate investing. And if you've been around this game for as long as I have, 16 plus years as a real estate investor, just having your manager meet the adequate level is often sufficient. Sometimes adequate will do. You're not looking for a friend. You need a property manager that will initiate a prompt eviction if it ever came to that, consistently deposit your funds when they should, and send you a timely property management statement. Some of the other pitfalls to avoid and things to ask your prospective turnkey provider about is, do they do markups? What I mean is that, say your manager has to call a plumber out to your property for a toilet issue, okay? That stuff just happens. Well, would you pay the plumber $300? That's how it should work. Or would you pay an extra fee of, say, 10% to your property manager to call the plumber out? Then the manager charges you $330, keeps $30 as their markup, and still pays the plumber their $300. Do you pay an extra fee to your property manager for things like regular ongoing inspections? Annually or semi-annually, I don't expect to pay for that service. I expect that to be part of the regular management fee. You know, I've even seen benefits to the manager doing a walkthrough just 1 week after the tenant occupies the property. Well, what could possibly go wrong 1 week after initial occupation? I've seen a tenant plug 12 electrical devices into one standard receptacle, and they think that's all right. So there are nip-in-the-bud types of benefits to a post-move-in walkthrough. Other downsides to buying turnkey are, of course, buying in the wrong market or investing with a turnkey provider that has a high vacancy rate. And if you're investing in a thriving market, then why does the provider in that market have a high vacancy rate? They shouldn't. Another downside is that to be a successful turnkey real estate investor, you can't think it's 100% passive and that you can just always and forever stay totally disengaged. Review your property management statement to see what's going on monthly. Management provides you with monthly statements, and they're usually accurate with all your amount credits, which is usually just the rent income, and all your monthly debits, your expenses, your principal and interest, and those aforementioned VIM-TUM expenses. When I see something off in a monthly property management statement, a common one for me is when at tenant move-out, I've been charged with something that instead should have been deducted from the tenant's security deposit. Look out for that one. Another pitfall to avoid with passive real estate investing is when repairs come up on the property. Well, maybe they should have been covered under the year one scope of work warranty from back at rehab time. And if they weren't, well, then maybe they're due to damage caused by the tenant, and it should be the tenant's responsibility. Now, let me give you an example of where in turnkey you need to stay mindful and conscientious. If a big ticket maintenance item comes up, we'll say that one slope, half of your roof shingles, were blown off in a windstorm. Well, don't forget to consider contacting your insurance company if it's something that's not the responsibility of your tenant or your provider. Yes, you wouldn't believe how often investors forget to contact their insurance company in this case, but yet at the same time, that investor makes sure that they keep paying their annual insurance premiums. If your major maintenance expense is substantially higher than your deductible amount, it might be worthwhile to file a claim. If it's early on in your ownership, though, like the first year, major maintenance items might be covered by your turnkey provider in that scope of work warranty. So those are some other places to check before paying it out of pocket yourself. Now, don't let any of these things dissuade you from passive real estate investing with turnkey property if it's something that you're considering, because all of these downsides, they're really pretty manageable. The bottom line, though, is that turnkeys are not too good to be true. They are real, and you can build substantial wealth with them. It's just that they aren't always as completely hands-off as some companies advertise. Some of these problems I'm talking about are not unique to passive real estate investing. They're just general things that can go wrong in most any real estate investing. On the positive side, you're pretty likely to be working with experts in the market where you've bought, so you are able to get a lot of built-in local expertise that comes right along with your property. In most cases, you will be paid 5 ways simultaneously this way as you build wealth in your sleep, and you didn't have to deal with the complexities and uncertainties of managing rehab contractors yourself or doing the work yourself. Personally, passive real estate investing caters better to my proclivities than active real estate investing. You know, building or fixing physical stuff is not my forte. Oh, jeez. Yesterday, it took me 20 minutes to try to hang a Christmas wreath on our front door. 20 minutes to hang a wreath. And note that I said try to hang a wreath because after 20 minutes of work, I still failed to hang the wreath. So much of this is about expectations, whether it's a movie that you're about to go see or a blind date that you're about to go on. It's about expectations and how your result compares with your own preconceived expectations. And passive real estate investing isn't any different. Your expectations should be set at a realistic level and not a fantasy level. Now, I go to real estate investor meetups and conferences pretty regularly. In fact, I'll be in San Diego, California next week for a real estate investor mastermind meeting. And, you know, in these groups, you hear little grumblings about providers that are not up to par. And I endeavor to a great degree to only have the top echelon providers at our GRE Turnkey network. Well, now that you know more about what to avoid, what are some of the nuances of a successful turnkey real estate investing company, successful in the light that they are providing well for their investors? What's an example of someone that's doing it right, and how do their efficiencies and best practices make an investor like you more profitable? When we return, I'm going to chat with 2 guests that are responsible for creating more passive income for you than anyone else in Get Rich Education history. That's in about 90 seconds. I'm Keith Weinhold. You're listening to Get Rich Education.
Would you like to know the easiest way to create wealth and passive income with real estate? This is Marco Santarelli with Norada Real Estate Investments. Now you can access the best deals without the stress or hassle of having to find, renovate, or manage those properties. We save you time by providing you with passive income investment properties in some of the best U.S. markets. Learn more by downloading your free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Passive Real Estate Investing. There's no obligation and nothing to buy. Simply visit passiverealestateguide.com and get your free copy today. That's passiverealestateguide.com.
For a real estate investor like you seeking an income property loan, go to Ridge Lending Group, NMLS 42056. Over the years, you've heard President Chaley Ridge generously devote her time to you here on the show as a guest. Ridge provides investment property loans in most U.S. states, and you're going to find out how they've helped more people realize their dreams of real estate financial freedom than any other mortgage lender in the entire nation when you get started at ridgelendinggroup.com.
This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Terry Kerr was born in 1970 in Memphis, Tennessee. With the exception of some nomadic travel for a couple years in his early 20s, he has lived in Memphis his entire life. He is the founder and CEO of Mid-South Homebuyers. In 2001, he fell in love with making ugly houses pretty, and he set out to master the business of passing bargains on to bargain hunters. And since then, Mid-South Homebuyers has purchased, renovated, and sold more than 1,500 single-family houses in Memphis to real estate investors across the U.S. and the globe. Liz Nowlin Brody is an avid real estate investor herself who spent the last 16 years of her professional life working in multiple markets as a property manager, marketing director, realtor, writer, and a public speaker. And for the last 8 years, she's been working side by side with Terry Kerr, building Mid-South Homebuyers into one of the most successful turnkey providers in the United States. Welcome back to Get Rich Education, Terry and Liz.
Thanks so much, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. Great to be here.
Hey, it's so good to have you here. First, just why Memphis? And I know it's not why Memphis just because you live there. We've had major media such as Forbes point out that Memphis is the number 1 cap rate market. Why Memphis?
Keith, you're right. It's not just because we live here. I'm fortunate to be born and bred a Memphian, but it's really the price to rent ratio that attracts investors. Investors are looking for a lower purchase price in relation to a higher rent. And we didn't create that in Memphis, but we're super fortunate to be able to provide the best price to rent ratios and consequently the highest cash flows for investors in the United States.
That's the main way the stars aligned here, but the little details look really good too. The common construction style of a brick one-story ranch, 1,100 to 1,700 square feet. That is the typical house here. The aluminum windows, hip roof, this beautiful low-maintenance construction, more affordable property insurance than I've seen in any other market that I've looked for, and stellar landlord-tenant law, just are kind of the icing on the cake for this market.
Some ask the question, why are there such favorable ratios of rent income to purchase price there?
Well, to start, Memphis is in the 95th percentile among major cities from a rent to owner occupant ratio. So in other words, about 52% of the Memphis market rents. So we've got, fortunately, a larger pool of folks that rent versus own their homes. And that's just kind of where it starts.
It's driven by our awesome sort of the market drivers for our economy here. We have the second biggest cargo airport in the entire world, second only to Hong Kong. So more freight is coming through Memphis than anywhere else in the world but Hong Kong. We're the third largest confluence of rail in the U.S. You've got barges going up and down the Mississippi, Highway 40 running coast to coast. Our many investors never really come to town, but when folks do, they'll comment to me that they've never crossed over so many railroad tracks while passing so many semi-trucks, while seeing so many FedEx planes in the sky. These are massive employers of labor jobs, people at assembly lines. And we have Nike's largest North American distribution facility. It's the size of 42 football fields. It has 33 miles of conveyor belts in there. We joke that you can see that Joker from space. Huge, huge employers in these for kind of blue collar labor jobs, folks that tend to rent, great employment for folks that tend to rent. And we get to provide them awesome housing close to their jobs.
It's great. Folks graduate from high school and they can step into a nice paying job with FedEx or UPS or Nike or one of the many outfits that Liz was talking about. And for whatever reason, there's just a renter culture here. And it's just something that we're fortunate to have.
Yes, 52% renters in Memphis, which is just remarkable. So many of them have jobs that are tied to things like transportation and distribution. The FedEx hub is there. You do have the second busiest cargo airport in the world and the busiest cargo airport in the United States. And those are jobs, distribution and transportation, that you just can't easily outsource or offshore somewhere else. That infrastructure, those highways, those railroads, that FedEx hub, that airport is already built there, and it's not going to be moved. A lot of people think about distribution and transportation when they think about Memphis, but St. Jude's Children's Hospital and Research Center is there. That's the well-known hospital that's based in Memphis ever since its founding in the 1960s. So just talk to us a bit about the medical center there.
The medical center is growing like crazy. I mean, St. Jude's doing a $430 million expansion right now. And so it's bringing in a lot of high income earners from all over the world to the city to work at St. Jude. And of course, everybody that's going to come to work, they need a place to live. They need someone to fix their car. They need someone to wait tables. There's all of this. There's a lot of folks that rent from us that will end up serving a lot of the folks that are going to be working at St. Jude. And like you mentioned before, the Mississippi River is not going anywhere. The rail's not going anywhere. I-40 is not going anywhere. So Memphis is pretty darn stable from a standpoint of you can bet that FedEx isn't moving, St. Jude's not moving. Everyone's going for it. So we feel real good about Memphis's continued bright future.
Tell us about how that's translated into the ability for an investor to get a rent increase on a property there. Some investors overlook the meaning of a rent increase. If you get just a $25 year-over-year rent increase, well, that might only be a 2% rent increase, and that might not sound very thrilling until you realize that that property might be producing $200 cash flow for you. Well, a $25 increase in your $200 cash flow, that's a 12.5% increase on the money that goes into your pocket every month. So if you extrapolate that effect across your portfolio, rent income growth can be really important. Tell us about that.
It's the funnest part of the game. Memphis is a good, safe, slow and steady wins the race kind of market. Our investors have been with us we've been in business for 16 plus years. So we've worked through every market cycle you can imagine, been successful, and our investors have been successful through every market cycle you can imagine, which is a wonderful track record to have. And of course, as rents go up along the way, it's the icing on the cake. And we are big fans and promoters of our slightly under market rents. No tenant has ever left us because they found a nicer place for less money. It's the driver of our 99% occupancy rate, our average 3.5-year tenant stay. We typically don't have to advertise a property for rent for more than 2 weeks before it gets filled. And we're able to offer that lifetime vacancy warranty, all because we have gotten setting these rents to such a precise, dialed in exactly to where it should be in the market. And we're hitting 100% occupancy rates or so around December of 17, running some wait lists for renters. And we always want to be maybe $10 below market and just be that really attractive deal. But we also want to be no more than that. And so we let the kind of local competition experience the pain and vacancy, pushing open new market rents. And then we like to come in behind when the market is used to it. And so as our properties have been turning over, they've been re-renting.
It's really been nice. And the thing is renters want value just like us investors do. And so it's our job to provide good value to renters. And that's providing the nicest rehab that they can afford. And it's also being there to answer the phone and not outsourcing our repair department or outsourcing our resident retention department. And it's just about being there and answering the phone. And if someone's heat goes out, you're out there the same day or worst case scenario, next day to fix it. And it all starts with the resident. If the resident is happy, then the investor is going to be happy. And it's fun to get to focus on that.
Eliminating vacancy and turnover, which is the greatest nemesis for an investor, has so much to do with profitability. And part of that is the good service that you provide to both the investor and the tenant there. And part of that is what I would call, in my experience, is that you're very well integrated there at Mid-South Homebuyers. Where you have the offices just adjacent to that within the same building, you also have stockpiled supplies and appliances so that you can do quick turnovers. Tell us more about that integration with management, supply, and your offices.
The funnest thing for me is getting to work on efficiencies. And so like you mentioned, we're buying our materials in bulk. We don't have to look for repair people outside of the same folks that are doing our rehab. So the same individual that installed a new HVAC system and a new rehab is going to be the same individual that is there to service the property down the road. And then there are other efficiencies that we work on in addition to that. And we've got proprietary program systems that send auto emails when a deposit is taken or when somebody puts in a notice to vacate. We have a system created to where our team doesn't have to wonder what they're supposed to do. They all have their own pages and get auto emails that tell them what they need to do so they can use their brains and creativity to do their job instead of remembering to do their job. And the longer we've been in business, the better we've gotten at internal efficiencies and creating a better quality of life for our employees, because a happy employee is going to be able to give better customer service to both the resident and our investor partners.
We have low turnover in our houses and we have incredibly low turnover in our staff. It's a happy family. And I think people can feel that vibe when they come visit, which we certainly welcome investors to come do it. It will push their confidence through the roof when they see what's going on down here.
Yeah, you not only have a high degree of integration there, you have a pretty high degree of automation efficiency. And I've seen that myself. A lot of that translates into your properties when you're driving around Memphis. And we've had just the four of us drive around Memphis one time, the two of you, my wife and I. You can drive around and you can kind of, as you go down the street, identify which home a Mid-South Homebuyers is, because you do have consistency across your renovations.
Well, we're trying to provide pride of rentership. So I know what you mean, Keith. And, you roll down the street and yes, the houses have shutters and yes, they have landscaping logs and they have bushes and they have nice mailboxes and everything is the way I would want to have my house if I were to live in the neighborhood. And when you've got pride of rentership, you've got folks that come over to visit the renters and then they want to live in a house that way. It's just sort of an endless loop. And the job, again, is to start with the resident, provide that value, and then make sure that everyone you touch along the way says, hey, I want to do that deal again.
100% of our properties, without exception, are going to have brand new components out of the box with manufacturer's warranties. brand new 30-year shingle roof put on by us, not a overlay, a full tear off, and a better than 1% price to rent ratio. It's a really fantastic combination. I've scoured kind of coast to coast looking for similar things, and you can find people that get close to our renovation or new construction. And the closer you get to us, the worse the ratios get. Yet to find anyone doing all new components and a 1%. You can certainly find folks with similar price to rent ratios as us all day long. And 100% of the time, you're accepting a significant amount more of age on those major components. And so that's kind of a intersection that makes us pretty unique.
Anything else you do differently than others in that investor advantage market of Memphis?
From the management side. So it's all about the management, really. So having a nice rehab with warranties on everything, that's great. But I was told when I first got into this business that a property management can manage a great deal right into the ground or can manage a marginal deal to success over time. I know we kind of keep coming back to the same thing, but it's really all about the value that we're providing to the residents. And of course, investor partners of ours want value in the form of a good communication and good customer service. And we give that, but the day-to-day is with the resident. So we do things like we don't charge application fees to our potential residents. We eat that cost because we want to take a look at as many potential residents as we can to try to find the best resident for the property for our investor partners. And it's important for any of your listeners out there, Keith, regardless of the market that they're looking in, is to make sure to check out the property management company just as hard, if not harder, than you're checking out the individual that you're selling the house to. Because if I'm buying a house from someone in Florida, I can get a home inspection. That's going to tell me the story on the house. It's not going to tell me the story on the property management. We've got a due diligence section of our website where you can, your listeners can download questions to ask their turnkey sellers in any market. So we enjoy educating our buyers who sometimes buy from other folks in different markets on how to shop and try to make sure that they're getting the best deal, not only on the house, but with property management, because property management, that's where rubber meets the road.
Just like you're comparing one house to another, the very next step is to compare one management agreement to the other, because the same house will perform very, very differently under different property management companies. You can actually download our management agreement from the property management section of midsouthhomebuyers.com, and apples to apples is better. For example, we charge 10% of the monthly rent, which is what everyone in Memphis charges for property management, but ours is only of the rent collected. Your property comes filled for free, but after that, our charge is only half of the first month's rent to find the tenant. It's essentially universally 75% to a full month's rent. All these little things that when you're looking at a 20-year hold really add up. Not marking up materials to investors it's unique nationwide to my knowledge at this time. As far as passing on the paint and screws, doorknob handles, whatever used on your house through the years, exactly at the property management company's cost.
Yeah, no application fees, no markup on materials really gives you guys some advantages there. And you have some special guarantees for investors. Tell us about those quickly.
We do. So when an investor buys a property from us, we have a 1-year labor and material guarantee, bumper to bumper, on the house. And this is not an insurance policy that we're buying from, like, say, American Home Shield or an outfit like that, where there's going to be pushback. We covered 100%. We also have a lifetime rent guarantee to where if a property is vacant for more than 90 days, we'll kick in and start paying all of the rent after 90 days. We've never had to do that because we haven't had a property sit vacant that long. And
that's remarkable.
Is because we're leading with providing value to the resident. And then we've also got a 1-year refill guarantee. Again, super rare that we'd ever have to use that. But if the property were to happen to fall vacant within the first year of ownership, then we refill the property for free. When Liz came on board, she saw that we were doing all these things, but we didn't put anything in writing. And she's like, well, why don't you tell people that? I'm like, I don't know. Well, we just do it because it's the right thing to do. And she's like, dude, you got to tell people that. So now we're telling.
I think it's also, with me speaking to investors so much, I learned so much about investors' experience with other turnkey providers. And so for us, not having vacancies that long, it's just your normal way of life. Because of the, as Terry would say, where the bodies are buried in this industry will be providers pushing up rents to above market value so that they can sell those properties for more. and particularly when a lot of real estate investors are from expensive coastal markets like California and New York, they can't possibly know that $950 a month in rent is too much to ask for that property. And the number of investors that I have talked to that have experienced 100+ day vacancies with other providers is pretty heartbreaking. And that definitely gives them a ton of peace of mind that these properties are, the rent price is set to rent the house, not to sell the house.
We have favorable rent to price ratios there, where in a lot of markets you can't get 1% plus anymore. You do have that astounding rental guarantee where, again, if you have a property that's vacant longer than 90 days, you would begin paying rent to the investor, but you've never had to make good on that because it's never happened. So Terry and Liz, where can someone learn more about Mid-South Homebuyers?
Contact Liz.
Yep, midsouthhomebuyers.com. All emails, links, and phone calls lead to me and my team. We love talking about real estate. Please feel free to reach out if you're not ready to invest yet, or if this is something you want to do in 2020. We're happy to chat. And we've developed the website to be a resource. Terry and I worked on it for really years. It's an ongoing progress. There's so many videos, again, like I said, management agreement, all the houses up there, all of our houses become almost interchangeable because we're so incredibly picky about neighborhood quality, so incredibly picky about tenant quality. And then every home is renovated to essentially the max level that you can. Folks can jump on that available property section and really look at houses that could be helpful to them.
And also, depending upon, some of your listeners may be wanting to buy in their own backyard. And so our website, even though we're in business to sell houses and we want to sell houses, the website is 100% designed to just give information that will help folks buy in any market.
There is good information there, like the questions to ask to vet any turnkey provider, and that's of a real credit to anyone, no matter where they buy. Well, Terry and Liz, you guys have helped more Get Rich Education listeners than any other provider anywhere either get started with turnkey real estate investing or add some turnkeys to their portfolio. Thanks so much for coming back onto the show.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you, Keith. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, well, it's great to have Terry and Liz from Memphis back on the show. It might even be soothing for you to hear their voices at this point, since there's a fair chance you currently own property with them. I'd say typical rents for their properties are about $750, and purchase prices are about $70,000. Those figures are probably pretty close to the median. Now, if you're a new listener and you happen to live in a higher-priced housing area like Metro New York City, Northeastern New Jersey, Coastal California, or another higher-priced housing market, you have to get conditioned to the fact, I went through this before, the fact that you really can get a fully rehabbed home in a safe, decent neighborhood where a manager will manage with a tenant that pays the rent. Yes, you really can. If you think that turnkey real estate investing could be for you, they are a highly reputable provider. You can learn more at midsouthhomebuyers.com. I'm Keith Weinhold, and I'm truly grateful that you choose to invest your time with me. That's why I'll be back next week with a valuable show. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
As America's third largest city, Chicago, Illinois has big economies of scale for real estate investors. But there are problems with investing in highly taxed, fiscally strapped Illinois. You can beat it when you invest in Chicago land, staying on the Indiana side of the state line. Your property tax on a median Indiana home is less than half that of an Illinois property. Forbes ranks Indiana as one of the top 10 states to do business. With typical rents at $1,250 and purchase prices at $125,000, Northwest Indiana numbers work. Learn more and connect with the turnkey provider at getricheducation.com/Chicago. That's getricheducation.com/Chicago.
71% of Americans aren't saving enough for retirement. It's going to get worse as people live longer, and you need to start thinking differently. But you can't lose your time. Real estate is the investment vehicle that's made more ordinary people wealthy than anything else. Keith Weinhold of Get Rich Education is host of one of America's top investing shows, Disrupting Wall Street. He's an international best-selling author, a writer for Rich Dad Advisors, and has been an active income property investor since 2002. He has created thousands in passive monthly income for countless followers, and now he has a free book, The 7 Principles for Creating Wealth in Your Life. Get your copy now at getricheducation.com/book. That's getricheducation.com/book. Because invest in what produces income for you now and later. Sign up now at getricheducation.com/book.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.